Hello and welcome. Tonight, we won't be stepping onto battlefields or hearing the clash of swords. There will be no shining armor or thunderous horse charges beneath stormy skies. Instead, we'll enter an old tavern forgotten by time, where the fire flickers softly and shadows dance on worn wooden walls. Here, among muffled laughter and the scent of burning wood, lives an unlikely guardian. A cat with watchful eyes who listens to secrets whispered through cracks and murmurs shared between clinking mugs. This is his story, a tale almost lost in the quiet whisper of silent nights, but tonight it comes alive once more. Now, find a comfortable spot. Take a deep breath, let the world outside slowly fade away, and allow this story to calm your heart as we embark on a gentle journey where even a simple meow can save a kingdom. Before we begin, if this story touches your heart, feel free to like the video and subscribe, but only if you truly want to. And let us know in the comments where you're listening from and what climate is there. It's always a quiet wonder to see who is out there with us in the night. In a village tucked between gentle hills and woods full of secrets, there stood an old tavern, its wooden beams worn by time, its windows fogged with years gone by. The smell of burning wood and fresh bread mingled in the air, while flames danced lazily in the hearth. This was a place where weary travelers found rest, and stories wove themselves between mugs of honeyed mead. In the quietest corner of the tavern, with eyes shining like tiny lanterns in the dim light, lived a gray cat named Shadow. He was no ordinary cat. His footsteps barely made a sound, and his ears caught whispers no one else could hear. Shadow loved to curl up on the warm wood near the fire, listening to the voices that floated across the room. Each word carried a whole world. Every whisper might hold the key to forgotten mysteries. And tonight, something different hung in the air, a subtle unease that made Shadow's fur stand on end. In the far corner, a hooded man spoke in low tones to a group of men and women, his words heavy with plans that would shake the kingdom's foundations. Shadow listened closely. A betrayal plotted, a coup to overthrow the king and plunge the land into darkness. But there was a problem. No one understood Shadow's meows. His warnings were met with confused looks or gentle smiles. To the humans, he was just a cat, a quiet companion. But to the kingdom, it was its last hope. Determined to stop the disaster, Shadow slipped out into the night, moving swiftly through shadows and bushes, heading toward the castle where the old wizard lived. It was said that the wizard could understand voices no one else could, that he could read secrets carried on the wind and stars. The journey was not easy. The cold wind bit at his fur, and the trees whispered ancient stories, some frightening. But Shadow knew time was short, and the fate of the kingdom rested on his courage and cleverness. At last he reached the castle, where the wizard awaited him in a tower lit with flickering candles. His tired eyes, bright with wisdom, studied the small visitor carefully. When Shadow meowed urgently, the wizard smiled, understanding the message no one else had heard.
Together, the cat and the wizard began to prepare a plan to foil the traitor, using old magic and the cunning only a cat could possess. The night was long, and the kingdom's future hung by a thread. And so, in a silent dance between shadow and light, the cat no one saw became an unexpected guardian of peace, a story you now hear, to lull you into sleep with courage, mystery, and hope. The night deepened as Shadow prowled silently through the castle halls, his paws barely making a sound against the cold stone floors. The ancient walls held whispers of forgotten secrets, and Shadow's keen eyes searched every corner, every shadow for signs of danger. He knew the traitor's plans were perilous, and the fate of the kingdom depended on his vigilance. In the great hall, flickering torches cast long, wavering shadows, and the faint scent of incense lingered in the air. Shadow paused by a tapestry, his ears twitching at the faintest murmur. Beyond the heavy velvet curtains, footsteps echoed softly. A meeting was underway, hidden from the king's gaze. Shadow slipped past the curtains, moving with the grace only a cat could possess. He watched as cloaked figures gathered in a hushed circle, their voices low but urgent. The traitor, a man with sharp eyes and a cruel smile, spoke of rebellion and dark alliances. Plans to seize the throne and plunge the land into chaos spilled like poison into the room. Meanwhile, high in the tower, Eldrin the wizard pored over ancient scrolls, his fingers tracing the faded runes. The old man's eyes were weary but sharp, burning with determination. Shadow leapt lightly onto the wooden table, nudging a small, glowing crystal toward the wizard. Eldrin smiled softly, understanding the message. Together, they devised a plan. The wizard would cast protective wards over the castle, spells woven from the threads of moonlight and shadow, while Shadow would act as his eyes and ears, slipping unnoticed through the halls and gardens. Days passed, each one filled with tension and quiet hope. Shadow's world was one of patience and watchfulness. He followed suspicious footsteps, overheard secret conversations, and even discovered hidden passages known only to those who sought to betray the crown. One chilly evening, as the sun dipped beneath the horizon, Shadow spotted the traitor slipping through the castle's eastern gardens, clutching a folded parchment tightly in his hand. The cat moved swiftly but silently, weaving through the shadows as he led Eldrin and a group of loyal guards to the hidden meeting place. The traitor and his conspirators were caught unawares, their plans unraveling like fragile threads. The guards moved quickly, surrounding the group and ending the threat before it could take root. The kingdom was saved, not by armies or swords, but by a gray cat's keen senses and a wizard's ancient wisdom. With the danger past, Shadow returned to a spot near the hearth in the tavern. The fire crackled warmly, as if whispering its approval, and the villagers shared quiet tales of the brave cat who had saved them all. And so, as you close your eyes tonight, remember Shadow's story, a reminder that courage can come in the smallest forms, and that even the quietest voice can change the fate of many. Let this gentle tale carry you softly into dreams, where hope shines bright and heroes walk in silence. The castle settled into a calm silence after the traitor's capture, but Shadow knew the night held more secrets yet to be revealed. The kingdom's safety was fragile, woven from whispers and shadows that shifted with each passing moment. He prowled the quiet corridors, alert for any sign of unrest. Eldrin, the wise old wizard, remained by the window of his tower, watching the stars trace their ancient paths. His fingers gently turned the pages of a dusty tome, searching for forgotten magic that might guard the kingdom for years to come. The air hummed softly with enchantments whispered long ago, waiting for the right moment to awaken. Shadow's fur rippled as he paused beneath a grand tapestry, the images of knights and dragons frozen in time. Suddenly, a soft rustle caught his attention. A secret door, hidden behind the cloth, creaked open slowly. The cat slipped inside, curiosity driving him through the narrow passage. The tunnel was cool and dark, lined with stones slick from centuries of forgotten dust. It wound deeper beneath the castle than any servant dared to explore. Shadow's eyes adjusted to the gloom, catching glimmers of faint light ahead. At the end of the passage, he found a chamber filled with ancient artifacts, scrolls with unreadable scripts, and crystal orbs that shimmered faintly, and a delicate silver key resting atop a carved pedestal. The key pulsed softly, as if alive with quiet magic. Shadow reached out a paw to touch it, feeling warmth ripple through his small body. Suddenly, a gentle voice echoed, old and kind. "You have found the key of whispers," Eldrin said, stepping quietly into the chamber. "It unlocks not doors of stone, but the secrets of the heart. With it you may see beyond what eyes reveal." The wizard's words filled the room with a peaceful glow. Shadow's whiskers twitched in wonder. He sensed a new mission unfolding, a deeper adventure, where courage and trust would guide him through shadows yet unseen. Back in the village, the people spoke softly of the night's calm, unaware of the dangers still lurking in the corners of the world. But Shadow was not idle. Every evening, he patrolled the borders of the kingdom, his silent steps a shield against unseen threats. One chilly morning, as the dawn painted the sky in hues of rose and gold, a messenger arrived at the castle gates, breathless and wide-eyed. He carried news of a distant army gathering beyond the northern mountains, a force dark and vast, moving with quiet purpose. The kingdom's guards braced for what might come, but the king himself looked to Shadow and Eldrin, knowing that true strength lay not just in swords, but in wisdom and bravery. Shadow's keen eyes gleamed with resolution. The kingdom needed him more than ever. As the winds whispered warnings through the trees, the gray cat prepared to face whatever shadows awaited, a silent guardian standing between peace and peril. And so, beneath the endless sky, the story of Shadow continued, a tale of courage in the quiet, hope in the unseen, and the power found in even the smallest heart. As days slipped into nights and nights into days, Shadow's watchfulness became a quiet rhythm in the kingdom's heartbeat. Though small in size, his spirit was vast as the starlit sky that stretched endlessly above the ancient castle walls.
The northern winds carried whispers of change, stirring the leaves in a restless dance. Eldrin, ever watchful, prepared ancient spells to shield the kingdom from the coming storm. His voice, low and steady, recited incantations woven from the threads of forgotten lore, magic that hummed with the power of the earth itself. Shadow often sat beside him, feeling the pulse of the old magic ripple through the air. In those moments, time seemed to slow, and the world became a place of shimmering possibilities. The cat's green eyes gleamed with understanding beyond the usual feline curiosity. One evening, as the sun dipped behind the hills, casting long shadows across the village, Shadow noticed a flicker of movement near the edge of the forest. Silently, he slipped through the underbrush, following the faint scent carried by the cool breeze. Ahead, cloaked figures moved with purpose, their whispers sharp and hurried. Shadow's ears twitched as he listened, catching fragments of words. Invasion, dark alliance, the king's fall. The threat was closer than anyone had imagined. Swift as a shadow, Shadow raced back to the castle, his paws barely touching the ground. Eldrin was waiting, his eyes reflecting the flickering candlelight. The wizard's face grew serious as Shadow relayed the message through urgent meows and determined purrs. Together, they convened with the king's council, laying out a plan born not just from might, but from cunning and courage. Shadow would continue his nightly patrols, gathering information, while Eldrin worked his magic to fortify the kingdom's defenses. As the days wore on, the tension in the air thickened, but so did the bonds of trust and hope. Shadow became a symbol of quiet strength, his presence reassuring to all who knew the story. One evening, beneath a silver moon, Shadow found himself face to face with the enemy's scout, a fierce wolf with eyes like burning coals. The two stared in silent understanding, an unspoken respect passing between them. In that moment, Shadow knew the battle ahead would not only test strength, but the courage to stand firm even when unseen. The following dawn brought a hush over the land. The kingdom held its breath as armies gathered beyond the mountains, shadows stretching like dark waves against the horizon. Yet, within the castle walls, there was a calm resolve, a steady heartbeat carried by a small, gray guardian who believed in the power of the unseen. And so, dear listener, as your eyes grow heavy and dreams beckon, remember Shadow's tale, a reminder that courage often whispers softly, and that even the smallest among us can change the course of history. Let this story carry you gently into the night, where peace and hope linger in the quiet shadows. The days that followed were filled with careful preparation. Eldrin's spell shimmered faintly over the castle walls, a protective veil woven from light and shadow. The people of the kingdom went about their lives with quiet courage, unaware of the silent battle being fought on their behalf. Shadow moved like a whisper in the night, slipping through the alleys and corridors, his senses sharp and alert. The little cat had become more than a guardian. He was a symbol of hope in a time when fear could easily have taken root. One evening, as the sky painted itself in shades of deep violet and soft pink, Shadow found himself drawn to the edge of the royal gardens. There, nestled beneath a blooming rosebush, lay a small, worn leather pouch. Curious, Shadow nudged it open with his paw, revealing a collection of tiny, glimmering stones. Enchanted gems said to hold the power to reveal hidden truths. Eldrin, noticing Shadow's discovery, smiled gently. "These are the eyes of the forest," he explained. "With them, you can see beyond what is visible. They will guide you to those who mean harm and protect those who cannot protect themselves." With the enchanted gems secured, Shadow's nightly patrols took on a new purpose. Through the magic of the eyes of the forest, he glimpsed shadows moving where no one should be, heard whispers carried on the wind, and sensed danger lurking in places once thought safe. One night, the eyes led him to the castle's outer walls, where a group of cloaked figures attempted to breach the gates. Shadow's sudden appearance startled them, his eyes glowing softly in the darkness. The intruders fled, their plans thwarted by a small guardian's fierce courage. News of Shadow's bravery spread quietly through the kingdom, carried by those who believed in the power of quiet strength. Eldrin continued to strengthen the castle's magic, while the king rallied his people with words of steadfast hope. As the days grew shorter and the chill of autumn settled in, the distant rumble of marching feet echoed across the land. The enemy's forces approached, dark and numerous, ready to claim what they believed was theirs by right. But Shadow, with the eyes of the forest and the wisdom of Eldrin, was ready. The cat's sharp claws and quicker mind were matched only by the strength of his heart. As the stars blinked softly overhead, Shadow found himself atop the highest tower, gazing out at the dark horizon. The wind whispered promises of courage and resilience, and the kingdom held its breath, waiting for the dawn. And so, the first light of dawn cast a golden glow over the kingdom, bathing its towers and stone walls in warmth that defied the cold creeping in from the north. A gentle mist curled through the fields, wrapping the land in a soft hush, as if the world itself was pausing to listen. Shadow stood watch atop the eastern wall, his ears perked, eyes scanning the horizon. Below, the castle stirred quietly to life. Bakers stoked their ovens, guards rotated their posts, and distant bells rang softly to greet the morning. To an outsider, it might seem like any other day, but Shadow knew better. Under the stillness was a tension that hummed just below the surface. The distant enemy army was no longer a rumor, it was a certainty. Scouts had reported movement beyond the tree line, strange banners carried on the wind, and smoke curling from hidden encampments. But Shadow wasn't afraid. He had faced secrets, uncovered treachery, and walked through ancient magic in silence. Now he would do it again. Not for glory, not for reward, but because something inside him refused to let fear win. That morning, Eldrin called a council in the Great Hall. Kingsguard, messengers, mages, and map-makers gathered beneath the vaulted ceiling of carved oak and stained glass. But it was Shadow who leapt silently onto the table, placing the silver key in the eyes of the forest before the assembly. All fell quiet. It was Eldrin who spoke first. "This key," he said, lifting it gently, "unlocks more than doors. It opens paths we thought were lost, old tunnels, forgotten alliances, and the truth in a liar's tongue. And these," he added, gesturing to the glowing stones, "have shown Shadow what we cannot always see. We are not just facing soldiers, we are facing shadows, illusions, curses, ancient wrongs seeking vengeance." Murmurs rippled through the room. The king, usually stern and silent, leaned forward. "Then let us fight darkness not just with strength, but with light," he said. "We will not fall while we still have faith, wit, and our small guardian." Later that night, as stars pierced the sky, Shadow and Eldrin descended into the lowest chamber of the castle, where walls had not felt sunlight in 1,000 years. The path was narrow, lit only by the glowing pulse of Eldrin's staff. Here, beneath stone and silence, lay the Vault of Echoes, a place of old enchantments sealed away when the kingdom was still young. The vault opened with the silver key's soft chime. Inside, blue flames danced above obsidian stones, and scrolls hovered in the air, waiting to be read again. Shadow walked among them as if he had been there before, unafraid. Eldrin drew one scroll gently toward him and began to read. His voice trembled, not with fear, but awe. This is what we need." He turned to Shadow, eyes filled with quiet resolve. "There is a spell here, ancient, binding, and pure. It will not destroy our enemies, but it will strip away their lies, their tricks, their illusions. It will show them for what they are, and let truth be their undoing." Shadow's tail flicked once in silent agreement. And so, while the enemy prepared for battle, Eldrin and Shadow worked in the hidden vault, one casting, one watching, their bond stronger than ever. Outside, the kingdom prepared too, not with fear, but with quiet hope. Because they believed. They believed in a little cat with bright eyes and silent paws. They believed in a wizard whose wisdom was deeper than the sea. And they believed that sometimes the smallest protectors carry the strongest magic. By the time the sun rose again, a quiet resolve had settled across the kingdom. The morning air was thick with anticipation, but no one spoke of fear. Instead, they moved with purpose, mending armor, sharpening tools, preparing lanterns, lighting candles in windows as symbols of unity. Word of Shadow's bravery had spread like a gentle breeze, not shouted from rooftops, but whispered in bakeries, at wells, by fireplaces where mothers told their children that the kingdom was not alone. Neither were they. Deep within the castle, Eldrin traced the ancient runes onto parchment with ink made of moonflower sap and ash from sacred wood. As he worked, Shadow watched, curled beside the flickering lamp, his tail wrapped neatly around his paws. The spell they were preparing was not one of destruction. Eldrin had made that clear. If we are to preserve what we are, then we must fight not as they do, with fire and steel, but with truth and clarity. Their weapons are fear and illusion. Ours must be light. That night, as the enemy began to move beneath the cloak of darkness, Shadow set out on one last patrol. The enchanted gems around his neck pulsed with a soft, steady light, guiding him through fog and night. He passed familiar corners of the village, empty now, but still warm with memory. The lantern maker's stall, the ivy-wrapped bench where the healer used to sit, the stable where the children once played. He paused in each place, as if gathering fragments of peace to carry with him. At the far edge of the kingdom, where the forest began, he paused. The enemy was close. He could feel them now, not just the sound of movement, but something deeper. The shifting presence of dark thoughts and bitter hearts, cloaked in illusions that twisted their shapes and hid their numbers. Shadow stepped forward. The enchanted gems flared softly. One by one, illusions began to dissolve in the trees. What had seemed towering warriors became thin, sickly men wrapped in false armor. What had appeared as dragons were merely shadows painted with fear. Shadow advanced, and fear retreated. Behind him, the old hidden paths beneath the castle had been opened, and from them poured quiet reinforcements. Villagers who had chosen to stand, archers whose arrows whispered through the air, and Eldrin, whose voice rose above the wind in calm defiance. And then, something unexpected happened. From the woods emerged a child, not older than 10, cloaked in the enemy's colors, eyes wide with confusion. Shadow approached slowly, gently, tail swaying low. The boy dropped his wooden sword and fell to his knees. "I didn't want to hurt anyone," he said in a trembling voice. "They told us lies. They said the castle was cruel, but I saw your lights, your people, the kindness, the cat." Shadow pressed his forehead gently to the boy's shoulder, and Eldrin arrived moments later. No harsh words, no punishment, just silence, and then understanding. The spell was nearly complete. Eldrin raised his staff, and a soft golden dome of light expanded outward from the castle walls. It did not burn or blind. It revealed. All at once, across the valley, the enemy saw each other for what they were: frightened, tired, misled. Some dropped their weapons. Others turned and fled, the illusions they clung to shattering like glass. It was not a battle. It was a return to truth. And at the heart of it all, a small gray cat sat calmly on the castle's highest wall, eyes shining, watching not for danger anymore, but for peace. In the days that followed, peace did not come with a trumpet's call or a grand ceremony. It arrived like mist on the morning grass, quiet, gentle, and unnoticed by most. But for those who had seen the veil lift and the lies dissolve, it was a miracle. The enemy forces, now unmasked and scattered, faded into the forests and hills from which they'd come. Many laid down their arms entirely, returning to forgotten villages and homes long abandoned by war. Some came back to the kingdom, not as conquerors, but as neighbors. The castle reopened its gates not in triumph, but in welcome. And Shadow, once just a tavern cat, walked freely among the halls and gardens, greeted with soft smiles and warm voices. Children left bits of bread and cheese along the windowsills, and old warriors bowed their heads as he passed. Yet Shadow did not change. He still moved in silence, his steps light and sure, his eyes always watching, not with suspicion, but with care. He no longer had to search for traitors in the dark, but he remained ever aware, not out of fear, but duty. Eldrin, now a little slower in his step and a little quieter in his speech, spent most of his days in the garden, teaching young apprentices about the balance between magic and intention. A spell, he would say, is only as strong as the kindness in your heart. And always, Shadow was nearby, resting beneath the lavender, chasing butterflies in the afternoon light, or curling beside Eldrin's feet while he spoke. One evening, as the air turned golden and the breeze carried the scent of wood smoke and rosemary, the king invited the people to gather in the central square. Lanterns lined the cobblestone streets, casting gentle glows across familiar faces. The king stood on the steps of the fountain, his cloak drawn around him, not for ceremony, but against the chill. His voice, usually reserved and formal, was soft. We faced a darkness not made of flame or iron, but one born of fear, lies, and division. We overcame it not through might, but with light, truth, patience, and courage. He paused, then looked to the wall where Shadow sat beneath a torch that flickered in the dusk. There is one among us who reminded us what true strength looks like. Small in size, quiet in step, but fierce in love and unwavering in loyalty. The crowd turned, and for a moment, no one spoke. Then, slowly, a wave of applause began, not wild or warring, but soft, heartfelt, and endless. Not for a warrior, not for a king, but for a cat. Shadow blinked once, yawned politely, and then curled into a soft ball, tail flicking lazily across his nose. The ceremony continued with music and food, but the heart of the kingdom had already spoken. That night, as the lanterns burned low and laughter faded into the hush of sleep, Eldrin and Shadow sat once more in the old tower overlooking the valley. Below, the village shimmered with candlelight. Above, the stars stretched like threads of silver across the night sky. Eldrin sipped from a small cup of honeyed tea. "You know," he said softly, "they'll write songs about you one day." Shadow made no reply, only blinked slowly, eyes half-lidded with sleep. "But the best stories," Eldrin added, smiling, "are the ones whispered by firelight, told to little ones before sleep, where no name is needed, just a cat and a kingdom." A gentle breeze stirred the leaves beyond the tower. The castle clock struck midnight, and Shadow, the silent guardian, the unexpected hero, drifted into dreams not of battles or spells, but of tavern hearths, warm laps, soft rain on rooftops, and a world now safe enough to sleep in peace. As the seasons turned and time folded gently over the hills, life in the kingdom returned to its quiet rhythm. Fields bloomed once more, Streets were filled with the sounds of merchants, laughter, and music, and the shadows that once clung to the edges of every corner faded into memory. People still remembered the strange night when illusions broke and hearts were changed. They remembered the spell of light, the kindness shown to strangers, and the young boy who dropped his sword and cried in the woods. But most of all, they remembered the cat. Though Shadow never sought attention, his presence lingered in every story told by the hearth, in every lullaby sung beneath thatched roofs. He had become something more than a creature of fur and whiskers. He was a symbol of quiet courage, of listening before speaking, of acting when no one else dared. Years passed. Children who had once fed him crumbs grew into bakers, guards, healers, and farmers. Some left the kingdom in search of their own stories, always carrying the memory of a soft-pawed friend who once saved a kingdom without speaking a word. Shadow, ageless in the way only legends are, continued his quiet patrols. He still walked the garden paths in the early morning mist, still watched the stars from the tower, still slept curled in warm windows when the wind grew cold. And yet he changed too, slowly, gently. His steps grew more measured, his naps longer. The silver in his fur caught the sunlight in ways that made even the youngest stop and smile. He was no longer just a watcher or guardian. He was a part of the land, like the old stones or the whispering trees. Then, one evening, long after the war had become a page in the royal library, Shadow did not come down from the tower at dusk. The lamps were lit, the paths were walked, but he remained still, nestled on the windowsill beneath the open sky, where the breeze was soft and the stars were just beginning to bloom. Eldrin found him there, resting in perfect peace, eyes closed, tail curled around his body like a ribbon of smoke. A faint smile touched the old wizard's lips. He sat beside him for a long time, saying nothing. The news spread quietly, not as grief, but as reverence. The bell in the central tower rang once, low and full, and the kingdom lit candles in every window that night, not in mourning, but in thanks. In the months that followed, they built a small stone garden in the castle's inner courtyard, just beneath the window where Shadow had taken his final rest. No statue, no plaque. Just a circle of lavender and ivy, with a warm stone in the center where sunlight fell each afternoon. And in that place, many came, not to pray, not to ask for miracles, but to sit, to breathe, to remember that even the smallest among us can carry the weight of a kingdom, that silence can be louder than speeches, that love can move mountains, and that even a cat can save a world. Some say that on misty mornings, when the garden is still and the wind is soft, a gray shadow moves among the flowers. No sound, no footprints, just a whisper of fur and peace. And somewhere far beyond the reach of time, in a place where stories sleep and dreams are born, a cat curls on a windowsill beneath an endless sky, watching over the hearts of those who still believe in quiet heroes. And so, as the night deepens and the world grows still, let this story remain with you, not in noise or urgency, but in the gentle warmth of knowing that sometimes the smallest light can guide the way. Good night, dear listener. Sleep well. Beneath the surface of a still and silvery lake, where moonlight ripples without cause and frogs sing to no audience but the stars, there lived a kingdom few had seen and fewer still remembered. It was a quiet kingdom, soft, secret, and patient. The lake itself was known as Mirror Deep, for it reflected the sky so perfectly that travelers often paused to question which way was truly up. Most believed the water to be bottomless, and those who dared to row to its center swore the air grew thicker there, the wind quieter, and time itself a little slower. But beneath that silent mirror was a hidden world, a place of luminous caverns, glowing gardens, and winding crystal corridors. Homes were carved from pearl stone and glass root, lanterns floated gently above the streets, and every step one took sounded like music played through water. In this kingdom lived beings who were not quite human, not quite fish, but something in between, graceful, curious, with eyes like deep wells and voices soft as the rain that never reached them. They called themselves the Nireen. The Nireen had lived undisturbed for centuries. They rarely surfaced, though legends whispered that long ago they had danced with humans beneath the full moon. But the world above had grown louder, harsher, and more forgetful. So the Nireen chose silence. They waited. They dreamed. Among them lived a girl named Lyra, young by Nireen measure, which meant she was barely 120 years old. She loved to sit near the shallowest parts of the lake floor, where the light still touched the stones, and watch the shadows of birds pass overhead. Lyra had questions, far too many for her tutor's liking. Why did the surface glow at day and shimmer at night? Why did the air above ripple with color? Why had the songs of the old ones stopped echoing from the caves? But more than anything, Lyra wanted to see the stars for herself. "You don't need stars," her grandmother often said gently, combing strands of kelp through Lyra's hair.
"We have the glow of the bloom gardens. We have the sapphire fish that light our nights." Still, Lyra dreamed of starlight and sky. One evening, as she floated near the silver boundary where water met air, something unusual caught her attention. A sound, not a song of fish or the creak of reeds, but a melody, soft and distant. It was not from the lake. It was from above. She followed the sound upward, her body trembling with both fear and wonder. As she neared the surface, the melody grew clearer. A single voice, human, singing into the dusk. Peeking through the water like a blade of grass through soil, Lyra saw a boy sitting at the edge of the lake, strumming a wooden instrument she had only read about in forbidden scrolls. A lute, perhaps. His voice was clumsy, unsure, but tender. And his eyes, they looked not at the lake, but beyond it, towards something far away. She listened. Night after night, he returned. Always to the same spot. Always singing different songs, sometimes speaking aloud, as if the water were a friend who could hear. Lyra never rose high enough to be seen, never spoke a word, but she memorized his songs. Each one became a part of her. The songs spoke of love, of loss, of stars and wind, of dreams left behind, and names no one called anymore. Something inside her stirred, something old and brave and restless. And then, one night, he didn't come. Lyra waited, and waited again. 3 nights? 5. The lake grew quieter. The world felt smaller. On the 6th night, she made a decision that would change not only her life, but the life of every Nireen beneath Mirror Deep. She would go to the surface. The ascent was slow, like waking from a long dream. Lyra had never broken the surface before. No Nireen her age had. As she swam upward, the water grew cooler, thinner. Her fingers brushed the tops of reeds she'd only seen from below. Each pulse of her heart was louder than the last. She paused just beneath the glassy veil of the lake. The moon hung above like a watchful eye. Then, with a quiet breath she didn't know she had held, she rose. The world exploded in sensation. Air, real air, touched her skin like 1,000 tiny hands. The chill of night wrapped her like a cloak. Sounds came sharp and strange. Crickets, wind rustling through leaves, the distant howl of something wild. The stars, oh the stars! They were everywhere, dots of light scattered across the sky, more than she had ever imagined, each one whispering in silence. She drifted in awe, but she hadn't come just for the stars. She had come for him. The boy. She found the place easily, near a crumbled stone pier where the land dipped into the lake like a tired hand. But the boy was not there. Only a small bundle rested where he had once sat. Wrapped in a weathered cloth was the lute, its strings loosened but intact. A note, barely dry, sat tucked beneath it. "To the water," it read in clumsy handwriting. "I don't know if you're real, but thank you for listening." Lyra read the words again and again. Her chest ached with something unfamiliar. It was not grief, not joy, something softer, more quiet, a kind of recognition. She cradled the lute in her arms, careful, as if it were a sleeping creature. Then she returned below. The city of the Nyrene was silent when she arrived. The lamps were dimmed, the streets still. But news, like currents, traveled fast. A girl had surfaced. A council was called. Lyra stood before them, elders wrapped in robes of light and memory, faces lined with choral wisdom. They asked no questions at first, only watched her with eyes like ancient tide pools. "You brought something back," one of them said finally. Lyra offered the lute, hands trembling. "A relic," another whispered, "from the world above." "It called to me," Lyra said. "He sang and I heard." "Many have heard," came a slow reply. "Few have answered." "I didn't mean to break our silence," she added, "but I couldn't bear the stillness anymore." A long pause followed. Then the eldest among them, a woman named Virel, who hadn't spoken in years, leaned forward.
"Perhaps," she said softly, "it is not silence we must protect, but the stories within it." The council dispersed in murmurs and ripples, leaving Lyra alone with the lute. In the nights that followed, she taught herself to play. It was not easy. Strings did not behave under water. But she experimented with bubbles, with vibrations, with threads of kelp and shells shaped to echo sound. Her fingers bled, her ears rang, but the music came. And when it did, the city changed. First, a few came to listen, then more. They gathered in the bloom gardens, in the shell-carved amphitheater, beneath the soft waterfalls. Lyra played, and with every note, memories awoke. Memories of old songs, of sunlit dances, of laughter once thought lost. Music bloomed again in Mere Deep. But with music came something else. Dreams of the surface, whispers of return. The young began to look upward more often. The elders grew restless. And far above, on land long forgotten by the Nyrene, the boy who had left the lute dreamed of water, stars, and a girl with eyes like stillness. The lake, once only a boundary, had become a bridge. More and more, the young Nyrene came to float near the surface, watching stars, listening for sounds.
Lyra played for them often, sometimes above the water, sometimes below. Her music was a gentle rebellion, and like ripples across stillness, it could not be contained. But change always stirs the deep. In the oldest part of the lake, beyond the reach of sun or song, there slept something ancient, older than the Nyrene, older than even the lake itself. It had no name, the young remembered, only whispers, the Watcher in the muck. It was said to awaken only when balance was broken, and balance was indeed shifting. The elders noticed first. The tides were moving wrong, the current slower in the morning, faster at dusk. Schools of fish changed course. Even the bloom gardens flickered unnaturally, as though catching rhythms from a different world. And then, one morning, the lake turned quiet, unnaturally so. No songs from frogs, not rustling from reeds, not a single sound above or below. The stillness rang louder than thunder. Lyra sensed it before anyone else. She was near the shallow shelf again, where she had first heard the boy's music, now humming a melody of her own. But as her fingers traced the strings, she felt a pressure, like the water was holding its breath. She turned. From the depths below, a shape emerged. At first, it looked like a shadow, or perhaps a trick of light, but it grew larger, more solid, a mass of shifting darkness, neither fish nor beast, gliding with impossible grace. The Watcher had awakened. Its eyes opened slowly, vast and colorless, like clouds that had forgotten rain. It did not speak, but its presence was a question loud enough to shake the stones. Why have you stirred the silence? Lyra did not flee. Instead, she bowed, lute in hand, and played. One note, clear, pure. The Watcher paused. 1,000 years of stillness hovered behind its gaze. Then, with a motion like a sigh, it drifted upward. Not to attack, not to rage, but to listen. The elders arrived moments later, breathless and afraid, but they too stopped when they saw Lyra, the Watcher, and silence, not as fear, but as reverence. Music, whispered Elder Varel, has awakened what history could not. From that night on, everything changed. The Watcher did not return to sleep. It lingered at the edges of the city, a quiet sentinel. The tides adjusted, the fish followed. Balance did not break, it evolved. And with that evolution came choice. The Nyrene began crafting vessels that could breach both water and air, chambers of kelp glass and song thread, powered not by flame or sail, but by resonance. Instruments became tools, songs became maps. Exploration began. Some Nyrene rose to the surface and returned. Others remained above for hours. Lyra was the first to walk fully upon the land, her legs unsteady, lungs stinging with air, but her heart steady. She searched for the boy. The world above had changed. The forests were older, the paths overgrown. The village he once sang from had emptied, its stones worn and wild. But she was not alone. From the edge of a sunlit cliff, a voice rose. It sang, clumsily, tenderly, a tune familiar, broken, then whole again. Lyra followed the sound. She walked quietly, as if each footfall might disturb the memory around her. The trees whispered among themselves, An old language, slow and full of green thoughts. Birds shifted gently in the branches, watching the stranger with eyes like polished stone.
Then, through the underbrush, she saw him. He was older now, not by much, but the change was there. Shoulders broader, hair longer, eyes that looked out and remembered. He sat near a brook, lute in hand, playing that same fragile melody he had once offered to the lake. Lyra did not speak. She simply stepped into the clearing and let the silence draw his eyes. When he looked up and saw her, time hesitated. He blinked once, as if waking from a dream. The lute slid from his hands onto the grass. "You're real," he said softly. "I always hoped, but..." Lyra smiled, then knelt to pick up the lute. Her fingers danced across the strings, tuning it with gentle precision. Then she played, one note, then another, until the melody returned to full bloom. They played together until the sky dimmed. No words passed for a long while. None were needed. The music held everything. Finally, he asked, "What's your name?" "Lyra." "I'm Emmerich." The names settled between them like seeds. In the days that followed, Lyra remained in the village ruins, where moss climbed over old doorways and ivy whispered through collapsed roofs. Emmerich showed her the world above, its trees and trails, the rhythm of fire, the dance of wind. In return, Lyra taught him the songs of the deep, played on strings soaked in memory. Together, they rebuilt a small shelter near the lake, blending driftwood and stone, shell and reed. A place for both water and air. Music flowed through it like breath. News of Lyra's journey reached the Nyrene through the new vessels, craft that drifted between lake and sky like floating lanterns. Some were uneasy, others curious, but all watched. And then more followed. Not at once, not with fanfare or haste, but one by one, drawn by the strange calm in the surface light, by the echo of a note heard once in a dream. Nyrene children dipped their fingers into sunlight. Elders traced constellations with wonder. The world above was no longer forbidden. It was just unfamiliar. And the surface folk in turn began to hear rumors. They came in stories told around fires, of songs rising from the lake on windless nights, of figures swimming without breath, and voices that calmed the restless. Some believed, some did not. But one thing all agreed upon, the lake had changed. It was no longer only water. It was memory, bridge, song. One quiet morning, Lyra sat at the water's edge, eyes closed, letting the breeze carry her melody. Emmerich sat beside her, sketching new chords. Neither spoke. From the stillness, the watcher rose once more. It did not threaten, it did not question. It simply came, floating near the dock, eyes deep as shadow, waiting. Lyra stood and bowed. She played for it again, not out of fear, but gratitude. A lullaby for the old, for the depths, for silence that had sheltered so much. The watcher listened, then sank. The ripples it left behind carried far, into the reeds, the forests, the stars. And in those ripples lived a new rhythm, one of two worlds learning to hum together. As seasons turned like pages in a gentle book, the world above and the world below grew closer, not by conquest, not by decree, but by understanding. Children of both realms began to meet at the lake's edge, sharing games, songs, and stories. The Nairi taught the surface folk how to read the shimmer of moonlight on the water, how to follow the language of bubbles. In return, they learned how trees spoke through scent, how fires told time, and how silence in the air differed from silence in the deep. Emmerich and Lyra built instruments together, ones that could play underwater and in wind, carved from coral and wood, strung with hair and kelp thread. Music was no longer a bridge, it was a language, spoken with joy. Their home became a meeting place, not a palace or a hall, but something smaller, humbler, woven with care, filled with warmth. They called it the threshold, a space where neither world ended, but both began again. The Watcher visited often now, always silent, always watchful. The children left its small offerings, songs, drawings, loops of woven grass. It accepted all, vanishing slowly into the lake's calm after each visit, like a thought slipping back into dream. One misty dusk, Lyra stood by the water's edge, her reflection mingling with stars. "Do you miss it?" Emmerich asked quietly behind her. "The city beneath the lake?"
She thought for a moment, then shook her head gently. "No, I carry it here." She touched her chest, then his. "And now it carries you too." He smiled, pulling his cloak tighter. "I never thought I'd fall in love with someone who didn't breathe the same air. And I never thought I'd find peace in the sound of fire," she replied, laughing softly. Their laughter joined the wind. That night, as they drifted to sleep side by side, a strange thing happened. From the depths of the lake, a glow began to rise. Not bright, not harsh, just a pulse, slow and deep, like a sleeping heartbeat. It illuminated the water softly, revealing forms below, Narine homes, gardens, arches and domes. The kingdom beneath the lake shimmered into view not as a place forgotten, but as a place remembered. It had not vanished, it had simply changed. It now lived in memory, in connection, in song. Those above watched from the shore in silence. The elders of the surface wept quietly. Even the trees leaned closer, as if trying to understand. The kingdoms, one above, one below, had become one in spirit. And in the quiet that followed, Lyra played once more, a song for union, a lullaby for change. Notes so gentle, they folded the night around them like a soft blanket. Stars blinked slower. The wind softened. Even the Watcher, in its distant depth, closed its ancient eyes once more. Days turned to weeks, and the bond between the surface dwellers and the Narine grew stronger with each shared sunrise and whispered song. The lake became a place of gatherings, where stories from both worlds intertwined, weaving a tapestry richer than either had known alone. One evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of lavender and gold, a gentle breeze carried the faintest melody, a song of hope and unity, rising from the depths like a promise. It was Lyra's voice, blending with Emmerich's lute, their harmony floating across the water, touching every ear willing to listen. Around the fire, children nestled close to their parents, eyes wide with wonder. Elders nodded quietly, memories stirring deep within them. Even the Watcher, though unseen, felt the warmth of the music, its ancient heart beating in time with the song. The melody spoke of journeys yet to come, of bridges to be built, and fears to be left behind. It told of courage found in the softest places, in kindness, in patience, in the simple act of listening. As the last note lingered in the night air, a gentle rain began to fall. Not harsh or cold, but a soothing drizzle that kissed the earth and rippled across the lake's surface like a tender caress. Lyra looked up, feeling the droplets on her skin, and smiled. Emmerich reached out, taking her hand in his, their fingers entwined like the melodies they shared. Together, they watched the lake shimmer under the moonlight, a mirror reflecting not just stars, but the unity of two worlds forever linked by song, silence, and the enduring magic of hope. And so, beneath the vast night sky, the kingdom beneath the lake continued to live, not as a forgotten place of shadow, but as a beacon of light and peace where every heart could find a home. As the seasons whispered their endless cycle, the lake became more than a meeting place. It was a symbol of transformation. Stories passed from lips to eager ears, tales of unity and courage flowing like the gentle currents beneath the moon. The surface folk and the Nareen shared laughter, tears, and dreams, weaving together a future neither had dared to imagine before. In this new era, the city beneath the lake was no longer hidden by shadow and silence. Its beauty shimmered beneath the water, a secret garden nurtured by the songs of those who remembered. Glass domes caught the filtered sunlight, kelp gardens danced with gentle sway, and crystal spires rose like whispers from the deep. Emmerich and Lyra became guides between worlds, their music a language bridging what had once been separate. They taught to listen, to the water's murmur, the rustle of leaves, the heartbeat of the earth. Every note played, every story told was a thread sewing the fabric of a shared destiny. One day, a messenger arrived, a young woman from a distant village, her eyes bright with curiosity and hope. She carried a gift, a small, intricately carved box made of driftwood and seashells. Inside was a melody, written in symbols and song passed down through generations. Emmerich and Lyra studied the melody, feeling its power resonate deep within them. It spoke of journeys to unknown places, of challenges met with quiet strength, of light found in the darkest depths. Together, they began to prepare, not for battle or conquest, but for exploration, an invitation to discover what lay beyond the familiar shores of their lake and land. The community gathered, their voices rising in a chorus of encouragement and wonder. Children clapped with delight, elders nodded quietly, and even the watcher seemed to linger longer, as if blessing the new quest. With vessels crafted from kelp glass and woven reeds, powered by song and spirit, the explorers set out. Their journey was slow, careful, a dance between water and air, between past and future. As they traveled, they carried with them the lullabies of home, the stories of unity, and the hope that wherever they went, the song of the lake would follow. And beneath it all, the kingdom beneath the lake pulsed softly, a heart beating in time with the endless rhythm of dreams and dawn. The days stretched long and golden as the explorers journeyed farther than any had dared before. Each night, they gathered around small fires on sandy shores or beneath the shelter of ancient trees, sharing stories of the wonders they had seen and the mysteries still waiting. Lyra and Emmerich listened quietly, their hearts swelling with pride and hope. The melody carried by the travelers was not just a song, it was a living memory, a thread connecting every soul back to the kingdom beneath the lake. The world, once divided by silence and fear, began to hum with a new harmony. Rivers whispered secrets to the sea. Stars twinkled in response to the songs sung below. Even the Watcher, that silent guardian of the deep, seemed more at ease, its eyes reflecting the gentle light of trust. In a quiet moment, beneath a sky filled with countless stars, Lyra took Emmeric's hand. "This is just the beginning," she whispered. Emmerich smiled, feeling the weight of that truth settle warmly between them. "And whatever comes next, we face it together." As the night deepened, the music softened to a lullaby, a gentle gift from two worlds learning to dream as one.
The explorers' journey continued through misty mornings and quiet afternoons, their footsteps light upon earth that seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. Every village they passed greeted them with cautious smiles and wide eyes, curious about the stories that flowed from the lake's depths. It was not merely the tale of an underwater kingdom, but a message of hope, a whisper of peace that settled like a soft balm upon tired hearts. Emmerich and Lyra found themselves becoming more than travelers. They were ambassadors of a new era. Each night, around crackling fires and beneath skies filled with stars, they shared songs that spoke of unity and courage, melodies that wove together the voices of both worlds. Their music became a bridge, not only between the surface and the depths, but between past and future, fear and understanding, silence and voice. In one village, nestled between rolling hills and ancient forests, an elder approached them with eyes as deep as the lake itself. She spoke of old fears, of battles long past, and wounds still fresh beneath the skin of the land. But as she listened to their songs, her expression softened. "Perhaps," she said, "there is still room in this world for peace." Encouraged, the group pressed onward, their spirits lifted by every new friend made, every story shared, every laugh that echoed under the moonlight. They learned that the world above and below was vast and varied, full of wonder and shadow, but bound by the same yearning for belonging. One evening, as twilight painted the sky with strokes of amber and violet, Emmerich and Lyra paused at the edge of a quiet lake, much like their own. The water mirrored the heavens, stars flickering in its depths like distant fires. Lyra whispered, "Do you think the kingdom beneath our lake feels this faraway stillness too?" Emmerich nodded, fingers tracing the worn strings of his lute. "I believe it listens, just as we do. It waits, patient and hopeful." They played a soft melody, a lullaby for travelers and dreamers, a song that floated across the water and into the night. It was a promise that no matter how far they roamed, the kingdom beneath the lake was never truly gone. It lived in their hearts, in their music, in every quiet moment of connection. The days folded into weeks, and the explorer's path led them to a place where land met sea in a dance as old as time. Here, stories from lake and ocean mingled, and new songs were born, songs of journeying, of discovery, of the delicate balance between holding on and letting go. As they prepared to return home, their hearts full and minds opened wide, Emmerich and Lyra knew their story was just beginning. The kingdom beneath the lake was no longer a secret to be hidden, but a beacon to be shared, a reminder that even in the deepest darkness, light could be found. The night before their departure, they sat by the water's edge, the cool breeze carrying the scent of wildflowers and distant rain. Lyra rested her head on Emmerich's shoulder, and together they watched the stars blink slowly above, each one a silent witness to their journey. The lake shimmered beneath the moonlight, a mirror reflecting the endless possibilities of tomorrow. And in that quiet, tender moment, they understood that home was not just a place, but a feeling, a melody summed softly between two hearts, two worlds, forever entwined. The return journey was gentle, filled with the quiet hum of contentment and reflection. Each step back toward the kingdom beneath the lake was a step toward a new understanding, a realization that the world, vast as it was, could hold many wonders and still beat with a single heart. Emmerich and Lyra often paused to watch the sunlight filter through leaves or to listen to the soft ripple of water against the shore. In these moments they found peace, not the loud, bustling kind, but the gentle kind that wraps itself around your soul like a warm blanket. Back at the lake, the community awaited them, eager to hear tales of distant places and to learn the songs carried from beyond the horizon. Children gathered, eyes bright with wonder, as the travelers shared stories of stars that danced and forests that whispered secrets. The Nyreen, too, welcomed them home with open hearts, their shimmering forms reflecting the moonlight like jewels scattered across the water's surface. The old watcher, silent and steady, seemed to nod in approval, its ancient presence a constant reminder of the timelessness of their bond. With every new day, the kingdom beneath the lake grew, not just in size or splendor, but in spirit. Bridges of friendship and understanding were built with patience and care, stretching across waters and between hearts. Lyra and Emmerich continued to compose melodies that spoke of journeys taken and those yet to come. Their music carried the soft power of hope, weaving through the quiet nights like a lullaby meant for all who listened. As the seasons changed, the lake mirrored the sky's endless dance, sometimes calm and glassy, sometimes touched by the soft kiss of rain or the gentle caress of wind. But through it all, the kingdom beneath the lake remained a sanctuary, a place where dreams could drift gently into reality. And so, under the watchful stars and the whispering trees, the story of the kingdom beneath the lake lived on, a quiet tale of courage, connection, and the simple magic found in the gentle rhythms of life. As you close your eyes tonight, imagine the soft murmur of water and the distant song of a lute. Let it carry you to a place where peace flows like a river, and where every heart, no matter how small, holds the power to change the world. Days passed gently as the kingdom beneath the lake embraced the return of its wanderers. The air was thick with stories and songs, and every ripple of the water seemed to hum with renewed life. Emmerich and Lyra found themselves surrounded by friends and family, their hearts swelling with the warmth of belonging and the quiet joy of reunion. But even as the kingdom blossomed, whispers of change floated on the breeze. The world beyond the lake was vast, and new challenges always lingered at the edges of peace. Yet with every obstacle, the strength of the bond between the surface and the depths grew deeper, forged by trust and the shared dream of harmony.
In the evenings, by the glow of bioluminescent gardens, Emmerich strummed his lute while Lyra sang soft melodies that seemed to echo through the very stones of the city. Their music was a language of hope, a gentle reminder that even in darkness, light finds a way to shine. The watcher, ever vigilant, moved slowly through the crystal corridors, its presence a silent guardian of the fragile balance between worlds. Though ancient and quiet, it carried the wisdom of ages and a heart that beat with the pulse of the lake. Children of both worlds played together in the shallow waters, their laughter mingling with the songs of the reeds and the rustle of the kelp forests. They were the living proof that the kingdom beneath the lake was more than just a place. It was a promise of unity, a testament to what could be achieved when fear gave way to understanding. One morning, as the sun kissed the horizon with strokes of gold and pink, a messenger arrived bearing news from a distant land. There was a call for aid, a plea for friendship from a kingdom beyond the mountains, where shadows of old conflicts still lingered. Emmerich and Lyra exchanged a knowing glance. Their journey was far from over. With hearts open and spirits strong, they prepared to answer the call, carrying with them the songs and stories of their home. They knew that the path ahead would be winding and uncertain, but also filled with the promise of new friendships and the chance to spread the light of peace even further. As they set forth once again, the kingdom beneath the lake shimmered behind them, a beacon of hope shining through the depths. And beneath the surface, the watcher's eyes gleamed softly, watching over the endless dance of water and dreams. The path to the distant kingdom was unlike any Imric and Lyra had walked before, winding through valleys veiled in mist and forests where even the trees whispered. The road seemed to stretch beyond time, but their hearts remained calm, tuned to the rhythm of their purpose, the quiet, steady song of peace. In a meadow surrounded by blue glowing flowers, they met an old traveler who spoke little but smiled often. His eyes held the same depth as the lake itself. He offered them rest beneath a tree whose roots curled like fingers into the soil of centuries. There, Imric and Lyra listened to the wind as it carried tales of places unseen, of mountains that moved like sleeping beasts and rivers that sang lullabies to the stars. Each night brought new dreams. Lyra dreamed of flying fish leaping over mountain peaks, of music made from falling snow. Imric dreamed of a kingdom not beneath a lake, but within a cloud, held aloft by the breath of sky whales. These dreams, though strange, felt like gentle prophecies, whispers from the world's hidden corners, urging them forward. At last, they reached the edge of the troubled kingdom. A heavy mist hung over its borders, as if the land itself was unsure whether it wanted to be seen. The trees stood tall but silent, and the river flowed thick and slow, its surface like polished slate. The people there lived with wary eyes and hushed voices. Once vibrant villages now whispered with the echoes of laughter that had long since faded. A great sorrow had taken root, a misunderstanding buried so deep it had become tradition. Imric and Lyra did not speak loudly. Instead, they listened to the silence, to the wind, to the pain in the songs the villagers no longer sang. They offered no grand speeches, no parades, just music. Quiet at first, a hum beneath the window, a soft tune strum as children watched from behind shutters. Slowly, day by day, a chord was struck in hearts that had long forgotten how to open. An elder approached one morning with hands wrinkled like folded maps. She held a small flute, cracked and weathered. Without words, she placed it in Lyra's hands, then sat and waited. Lyra lifted the flute and played, not the songs of her own kingdom, but a new one, a melody born from silence, shaped by sorrow, healed by understanding. The elder closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, tears flowed freely down her cheeks. From that moment on, things began to shift. Fences that once stood tall were left unguarded. Markets opened early, filled with quiet chatter and warm bread. Children danced to music not yet written. And at the edge of the square, beneath a tree older than any man or map, Lyra and Imric sang as the people gathered, in silence first, then in harmony. The kingdom, once cloaked in shadow, began to breathe again. When it came time to leave, the people did not plead for them to stay. They knew the song had only begun, and that it would now carry itself forward through other voices. The true gift had never been the music. It had been the listening. Back on the road, Lyra looked toward the rising moon and whispered, "Do you think the Watcher can hear us from here?" Imric smiled. The Watcher listens not with ears, but with time. They continued walking, lanterns in hand, toward the next corner of the world in need of a quiet song. The road home was quiet, lined with flowers they hadn't noticed on their way out. Perhaps the blooms had always been there, waiting for the right eyes to see them. Or perhaps they had grown in the wake of the music, responding not to seasons, but to stories shared and hearts stirred. When they reached the shores of the lake once more, the water glistened with a deeper stillness, as though it had been patiently waiting for their return. No grand celebration awaited them, no trumpets or banners, only silence, the warm, welcoming kind. The kind that fills the space between souls who no longer need words. The kingdom beneath the lake had changed, not in shape, but in spirit. The stone corridors glowed with a gentler light, and the gardens sang quietly with new songs, ones not yet written, but already remembered. Lyra walked along the edge of the central fountain, her fingers brushing the surface of the water. "Did it feel this peaceful before we left?" she asked softly. Imric shook his head. "No, but maybe we had to leave to learn how to see it." The Watcher waited near the heart of the city, its great form still and listening. Imric approached with quiet steps and bowed, not out of duty, but out of gratitude. The Watcher, slow and ancient, dipped its head in return. No words were needed. As the days passed, the pair resumed their simple lives, though nothing felt quite simple anymore. Their steps were slower, more deliberate. Their laughter carried more weight, and their silence was rich with meaning. Children gathered each night in the amphitheater carved from coral and stone, where Lyra would play and Imric would spin tales not just of the journey they'd taken, but of dreams they'd yet to follow. The children listened with wide eyes and slow breaths, lulled by the warmth in the voices, by the truth nestled gently inside every tale.
In time, others began to travel too, not for conquest or trade, but for connection. Messengers crossed the lake's edge with music instead of maps. Stories became the new currency, empathy the shared language. The kingdom beneath the lake was no longer hidden. It had not risen to the surface, but the world above had leaned closer, quieted its steps, and learned to listen. And so, the story did not end. It rippled, like the water when touched by a breeze. It hummed, like a melody remembered in a dream. It rested, like a child curled beside the fire, knowing that tomorrow held another page yet to be written. If you close your eyes now and listen, you might hear it, the gentle song of the deep, where lanterns float like stars and hearts speak in silence. Good night, dreamer. Let the still waters carry you. Let the lake hold you. Let the kingdom within you rise. Sir Calum rode not with the thunder of hooves or the clash of metal, but with silence. His armor was dull, not from neglect, but from intention. Once polished to mirror the sun, it now bore the quiet tone of ash and rain clouds. He had not raised his sword in many years. It hung at his side like a forgotten branch of an ancient tree, useful once, but no longer necessary for the shape of his life. He was a knight who no longer sought battles, a warrior who flinched not at pain, but at memory. Villages knew his name, but not with the reverence they offered to others. While some knights earned songs of victory and triumph, Calum's name was passed in whispers. He refused the call of the iron bell. He walked away from the last march, but they never knew why. Caleb had seen too much, not in quantity, but in depth. He had seen the eyes of a child who had forgotten how to cry. He had seen the last breath of a stag caught between the lines of two feuding lords. And he had once killed a man who smiled as he died, whispering, "Thank you," as though death was release. He left the banners and camps behind that day and never looked back. Now his horse trod slow roads lined with moss. His meals came not from feasts, but from gardens grown by strangers who trusted his silence. He exchanged help for shelter, labor for kindness, and in time his sword became a tool, not to divide, but to mend. He used its broadside to pound fence posts into soft ground, to crush garlic for stews, to hammer copper leaves into shapes that danced when the wind passed. He was not trying to forget the war. He was trying to remember peace. One autumn dusk, as amber leaves fell like slow fire around him, Caleb arrived at a village without a name. It lay on the edge of an old forest and a forgotten hill. There were no walls, just simple homes that leaned slightly in the wind, as though listening for something. Children played with wooden foxes. Elders wove thread not for trade, but for memory. And when Caleb approached, no one asked his name. They simply nodded and made space. He spent his first night sleeping beneath an apple tree whose roots had cracked the stone path like time itself. Above, stars blinked through moving clouds, and the wind hummed in low tones, as if singing an old lullaby only the trees still remembered. In the morning, a boy stood watching him, no more than 7 winters old, with a face that had never seen a battlefield, but carried a shadow in his eyes. "You're a knight," the boy said simply. Caleb did not answer. He only nodded, his hand resting lightly on the hilt of a sword he no longer used. The boy continued, "My brother says all knights love to fight." Caleb shook his head gently. "Not all? Then why be a knight?" Caleb looked toward the hills. The breeze carried the smell of turned earth and distant rain. To protect peace, not to break it. The boy thought about that. Then, as children do, he simply accepted it and sat beside him, offering half a plum from his small satchel. The days in the village passed like slow poetry. Caleb repaired the old well with stones no one had touched in years. He taught the weaver's daughter how to bend iron without breaking it. He showed the baker how to build a second oven so no one would have to wait in the cold. And at night, he sat by the fire outside, listening more than speaking, until the stars blinked him to sleep. But peace is a fragile thing, and it listens to the footsteps of men who have not yet learned how to sit still. One autumn morning, a horn blew from the distant ridge, a low, sour note that did not belong to this place. Riders appeared, not with banners of war, but with papers and orders. A lord from the south reaches had claimed the hill upon which the village sat. There was no battle yet, only a decree. But Caleb knew the first page of war when he saw it. The riders did not bear swords drawn or voices raised. Their threat was quieter, more bureaucratic. Sealed scrolls and signatures forged in cold halls far from soil or sky. Caleb read the decree, though he already knew what it said. The hill and all it touched was now property of Lord Endrin of the South Marches by royal grant and ancestral claim. The villagers had 30 days to vacate or pay a tithe they could not afford, in coin they did not possess.
The messengers looked to Caleb, sensing the weight he carried. One of them, younger than the rest, perhaps only recently knighted, eyed Caleb's weathered armor and dusty blade with unease. "You were once of the king's circle," he said. "Why live among peasants?" Caleb's gaze did not waver, because they remember what honor means. The man scoffed, but said no more. When the riders left, silence fell again. A different silence now, one not of peace,
but of fear disguised as stillness. The villagers gathered that evening by the old well, beneath lanterns swaying in the wind. Some argued to flee, others wished to hide. A few spoke of resistance, but their voices were brittle, cracked by doubt. Calum said nothing for a long time. Then, softly, "If we fight them with blades, we lose, not because we're weaker, but because they expect it." The boy from before, whose name was Island, tugged at his sleeve. "Then what do we do?" Calum knelt to his level. "We build something stronger than war, and we let it be seen." The days that followed were unlike any in the village's history. No one fled, no one sharpened weapons. Instead, they worked. Together. The baker tripled her loaves and sent bread to every neighboring farm. The weavers dyed cloth not for sale, but to hang as banners of peace. Deep blues and golds that shimmered in the light. The children painted stones with old symbols of unity and placed them along every path. And Calum? He walked. From hamlet to hollow, from ridge to riverbend, he walked and spoke. Not of rebellion or battle, but of dignity, of soil that belonged to the hands that worked it, of harmony that didn't need permission to exist. He never raised his voice, but it carried. Within a fortnight, dozens came, not to fight, but to stand. Farmers, smiths, wandering musicians, old knights who had once sworn the same oaths Calum now lived by. Not one carried a banner, not one bore a drawn blade. But together, they formed something harder to move than any army. When Lord Endrin arrived with his regiment, it was not a battlefield he found. It was a gathering. Fires burned in respectful rings. Music drifted through pine trees. 1,000 eyes met his, not with defiance, but with stillness. Stillness that did not break. He ordered his men to approach. They hesitated. Then, from the crowd, Calum stepped forward, not with armor gleaming, but with hands open. The sword at his side remained untouched. "I will not stop you by force, but I will not move, and neither will they." Endrin's face twisted with irritation. "You think standing still wins anything?" Calum looked beyond him, to the hill and the homes and the laughter that still echoed through quiet wind. It wins what war never could. There was no charge, no fight, only the shifting of tension in the air, like a bowstring slowly loosening. Endrin left that night with no blood spilled and no decree enforced. He claimed later the land was cursed, unprofitable, but those who stood on that hill knew the truth. The village did not return to normal because it had become something new, something rooted. Calum stayed, but not as a savior, as a neighbor. And in time, other villages learned that peace could hold its ground, that resistance didn't always wear steel, that stillness, chosen, was its own form of strength. The seasons turned slowly in the village on the hill, and Sir Calum's days became filled not with conflict, but with the soft rhythms of life. Each morning he rose before the sun, walking barefoot through the dew-wet grass, listening to the song of larks and the creaking breath of the earth awakening. He repaired roofs, mended shoes, and sat with elders who had no more teeth but countless stories. Children still asked about battles, about dragons and duels, but Calum always turned their minds to quieter things. How to listen for rain in the wind, how to track stars through a canopy of leaves, how to know when silence means comfort, not absence. One early spring, the village received a visitor. She came cloaked in forest green, her face marked by long travel and sorrow. Her name was Elenus, and her presence was like a ripple across a still pond. She was not a warrior, nor did she come with titles, but her eyes carried the weight of a question, one Caleb recognized at once. She asked for no gold, no shelter, only a moment of his time beneath the boughs of the old apple tree. "There is a place," she said, "beyond the glade of black pines, a settlement. They've not known peace since the last winter. 3 families feud over a spring. What was once shared now becomes divided." Caleb said nothing first. He watched the tree branches shift above her, the way her fingers tightened at the memory of conflict. "Will you go?" she asked. He looked towards the mountains, faint and blue in the horizon, then back to her. "Not with blade, but yes, I will go." He didn't pack much, only a satchel of dried pears, a soft cloak, and a small book of meditations he had copied by hand over years. His sword remained at his side, not as a threat, but as a memory, sheathed in the peace he had built around it.
The journey took 3 days. He passed through fields where deer watched in stillness, and over rivers that whispered in languages older than kingdoms. When he arrived, the village beyond the black pines was silent in a different way. Doors were shut. Eyes watched from behind curtains. Even the dogs did not bark. He found the spring first. It was modest, just a clear pool fed by stone and rain, ringed by moss and shade. But its stillness had been broken. Around it stood crude fences, 3 of them, each cutting the pool into unequal slices. Caleb sat down beside the water, not to drink, but to listen. By midday, a man approached, then another, then a woman with a torn shawl and a guarded voice. They asked who he was. He gave no title, only a name. "I am Caleb. I do not seek to judge, only to witness." At first, they argued with each other more than with him. Voices rose. Old accusations were sharpened like blades. One man spoke of a cousin lost to sickness, blaming another family for hoarding water. The woman spoke of children born into fear, taught to hate neighbors they had once called kin. Caleb did not interrupt. He watched their hands, their eyes, the spaces between their words. When they fell into silence, spent from their own anger, he finally spoke. "I once stood in a place where war knocked, and we did not open the door." They looked at him, confused. Fear built this fence. But fear cannot drink, cannot wash a child's feet. The spring does not understand sides, only thirst. The woman stared at him, then at the water. Her voice was soft now. "But how do we undo years of pain?" Caleb answered with a question. "How do you begin again?" No one replied. Not then. But when the sun set, they did not leave. They stayed, sitting on opposite sides of the spring, saying nothing. That night, the fences remained, but tension lessened, slightly. He stayed 3 more days, said little, but each day he returned to the spring. He mended part of a broken bench. He helped an old man gather firewood. He shared his dried pears. On the 4th morning, the first fence was taken down. By the 6th, there were none. When he returned to the hill village, the children greeted him with garlands of spring blossoms, and the baker gave him a warm sweet roll filled with honey and rosemary. He said little of what he had done. He didn't need to.
The peace he helped kindle wasn't his to own. It simply was. In the months that followed, more visitors came, not with swords, but with stories. They had heard of a knight who didn't fight, but healed, who stood not on battlefields, but beside rivers, and in barns, and at wells, who did not command, but listened. They came with questions, hopes, regrets. Some just wanted to sit in silence beside him. Caleb began to understand something deeper, that his journey would not end in this village, that peace, like light, had to be carried from valley to valley, from soul to soul. But he did not rush. He knew that even the stars moved slowly. Summer came, slow and golden. The hill village burst into bloom, fields painted in lavender, bees tracing lazy circles in the warm air. Caleb remained quietly, tending to his days. He taught a boy to carve wood with care instead of haste. He helped an old widow plant lemon balm near her door to ease her sleep. He barely noticed the way his name began to spread beyond the valleys, how whispers of a knight without a sword traveled across trade routes, over mountains, beneath the wings of birds that watched everything. One dusk, as fireflies sparked over the meadows and the river hummed with frog song, a rider approached the village. She wore no armor, only travel-worn robes and a satchel clinking with scrolls. Her name was Mara. She said, "I come from the Southlands, from a town where the river has turned against us, red with rust, choked with sorrow. The elders cannot agree. There is talk of fire, of dividing walls. They asked for weapons. I asked for you." Caleb nodded. He had never heard of the Southlands, but sorrow needed no map. That night he packed his cloak, a jar of dried figs, and a pouch of star anise to steep into tea. He walked with Mara for 5 days. She spoke little. He didn't press her. In the evenings they sat by small fires, and she would write in her scrolls notes, symbols, pieces of broken dreams. One night he asked, "Why me?" She looked at the stars. "Because you carry peace like a lantern, and we are lost in dark woods." When they reached the Southlands, it was worse than Caleb expected. The river had indeed soured. Dead fish floated downstream. The air smelled faintly of metal and ash. 3 towers loomed in the distance, watchposts of old wars, now abandoned but still casting long shadows over the town. He found the people afraid, not of monsters, not of disease, but of each other. A river once shared had become a wedge. There were talks of flooding farms, redirecting water, defending what was theirs. Caleb said nothing for a day. He simply walked the riverbanks, listening to the mutter of currents, the hush of dry reeds. On the 2nd day, he built a small bridge, not a grand structure, just a plank and rope span between 2 banks.
The messengers looked to Caleb, sensing the weight he carried. One of them, younger than the rest, perhaps only recently knighted, eyed Caleb's weathered armor and dusty blade with unease. "You were once of the king's circle," he said. "Why live among peasants?" Caleb's gaze did not waver, because they remember what honor means. The man scoffed, but said no more. When the riders left, silence fell again. A different silence now, one not of peace, but of fear disguised as stillness. The villagers gathered that evening by the old well, beneath lanterns swaying in the wind. Some argued to flee, others wished to hide. A few spoke of resistance, but their voices were brittle, cracked by doubt. Caleb said nothing for a long time. Then, softly, "If we fight them with blades, we lose, not because we're weaker, but because they expect it."
The boy from before, whose name was Island, tugged at his sleeve. "Then what do we do?" Caleb knelt to his level. "We build something stronger than war, and we let it be seen." The days that followed were unlike any in the village's history. No one fled, no one sharpened weapons. Instead, they worked together. The baker tripled her loaves and sent bread to every neighboring farm. The weavers dyed cloth not for sale, but to hang as banners of peace, deep blues and golds that shimmered in the light. The children painted stones with old symbols of unity and placed them along every path. And Caleb? He walked. From hamlet to hollow, from ridge to riverbend, he walked and spoke, not of rebellion or battle, but of dignity, of soil that belonged to the hands that worked it, of harmony that didn't need permission to exist. He never raised his voice, but it carried. Within a fortnight, dozens came, not to fight, but to stand. Farmers, smiths, wandering musicians, old knights who had once sworn the same oaths Caleb now lived by. Not one carried a banner, not one bore a drawn blade, but together they formed something harder to move than any army. When Lord Endrin arrived with his regiment, it was not a battlefield he found. It was a gathering. Fires burned in respectful rings. Music drifted through pine trees. 1,000 eyes met his, not with defiance, but with stillness. Stillness that did not break. He ordered his men to approach. They hesitated. Then, from the crowd, Caleb stepped forward, not with armor gleaming, but with hands open. The sword at his side remained untouched. "I will not stop you by force, but I will not move, and neither will they." Endrin's face twisted with irritation. "You think standing still wins anything?" Caleb looked beyond him, to the hill and the homes and the laughter that still echoed through quiet wind. It wins what war never could. There was no charge, no fight, only the shifting of tension in the air, like a bowstring slowly loosening. Endrin left that night with no blood spilled and no decree enforced. He claimed later the land was cursed, unprofitable, but those who stood on that hill knew the truth. The village did not return to normal because it had become something new, something rooted. Caleb stayed, but not as a savior, as a neighbor. And in time, other villages learned that peace could hold its ground, that resistance didn't always wear steel, that stillness, chosen, was its own form of strength. The seasons turned slowly in the village on the hill, and Sir Caleb's days became filled not with conflict, but with the soft rhythms of life. Each morning he rose before the sun, walking barefoot through the dew-wet grass, listening to the song of larks and the creaking breath of the earth awakening. He repaired roofs, mended shoes, and sat with elders who had no more teeth but countless stories. Children still asked about battles, about dragons and duels, but Caleb always turned their minds to quieter things. How to listen for rain in the wind, how to track stars through a canopy of leaves, how to know when silence means comfort, not absence. One early spring, the village received a visitor. She came cloaked in forest green, her face marked by long travel and sorrow. Her name was Elenis, and her presence was like a ripple across a still pond. She was not a warrior, nor did she come with titles, but her eyes carried the weight of a question, one Caleb recognized at once. She asked for no gold, no shelter, only a moment of his time beneath the boughs of the old apple tree. "There is a place," she said, "beyond the glade of black pines, a settlement. They've not known peace since the last winter. 3 families feud over a spring.
What was once shared now becomes divided. Caleb said nothing first. He watched the tree branches shift above her, the way her fingers tightened at the memory of conflict. "Will you go?" she asked. He looked towards the mountains, faint and blue in the horizon, then back to her. "Not with blade, but yes, I will go." He didn't pack much, only a satchel of dried pears, a soft cloak, and a small book of meditations he had copied by hand over years. His sword remained at his side, not as a threat, but as a memory, sheathed in the peace he had built around it.
Stories of a knight who hated war, and in hating it, taught the world to love peace. The night stretched wide and deep over Midnight Hollow, a valley cloaked in mist and ancient trees whose branches tangled like the whispers of forgotten tales. The moon hung low in silver, casting gentle shadows that danced on the forest floor. Somewhere, hidden between roots and moss, the soft hoot of an owl echoed, a sound both mysterious and comforting. This owl was no ordinary bird. With feathers that shimmered faintly under moonlight and eyes that held the wisdom of ages, she was known simply as Eldra. She spoke in a voice like the rustle of dry leaves and carried a promise to guide those who had lost their way back to the safety of home. On this particular night, as the valley slept beneath a quilt of stars, a group of children found themselves far from the warmth of their beds. They had been chasing fireflies at the edge of the woods, their laughter weaving through the trees until the forest swallowed their path and the night grew thick with shadows. Among them was a boy named Finn, whose curious eyes sparkled with wonder, but also held a flicker of fear. He was not like the others, quieter, more thoughtful, as if the woods spoke secrets only he could hear. What the children did not know was that Finn's destiny was entwined with the magic that hovered in Midnight Hollow this night. For he was the child foretold to become a king, but only if he could survive the night's secret trials. Eldra appeared, silent as the mist, her wings unfolding with a soft rustle. "Lost travelers," she called softly, her voice carrying through the still air. The children froze, wide-eyed but entranced. "Follow me, and I will lead you home. But beware, for this night holds more than shadows." The children hesitated, then, with no better choice, began to follow Eldra's luminous flight. The owl's path wound through ancient oaks and under archways of silver-leaved maples where the air shimmered with unseen magic. Along the way, she whispered stories of the valley, of spirits who protected the land, of stars that guided brave hearts, and of the king yet to rise. Finn's heart pounded as they moved deeper into the woods. He felt the pulse of the earth beneath his feet and the cool breath of the night on his skin. Eldra's gaze met his for a moment, as if measuring the courage that flickered inside him. Suddenly, the path narrowed, leading them to a clearing bathed in ethereal light. In the center stood an ancient stone pedestal, engraved with symbols that pulsed softly, alive with forgotten power. "This is the first test," Eldra said. "To pass, you must look within and face the truth you hide." The children exchanged nervous glances, but Finn stepped forward. As he placed his hand on the pedestal, visions swirled before him, memories of fear, of doubt, of choices made in silence. Yet amidst these shadows, a small flame burned bright, hope. He whispered, "I will not let fear rule me." The light around the pedestal flared, then softened, and Eldra nodded approvingly. One by one, the children touched the stone, confronting their own truths, their own fears. Some faltered, others stood tall, but all moved forward, drawn by the promise of home. As the night deepened, the forest seemed alive with eyes, watchful gentle, testing. Eldra's flight led them past whispering streams and fields of glowing flowers, each step a story, each breath a song. At the edge of the hollow, a final trial awaited. A bridge woven of moonbeams, stretching over a chasm that seemed to breathe with the heartbeat of the earth. Only those with pure hearts can cross. The night reveals what we hide, Eldra warned. Finn's gaze fixed on the shimmering bridge. He thought of the path behind, of the friends beside him, and the home that waited beyond. With steady steps, he began to cross. The bridge sang softly beneath his feet, a melody of hope and courage. Halfway across, a shadow flickered, a fear of falling, of failing. But he pressed on, each heartbeat a drum calling him forward. When he reached the other side, the children cheered softly. The mist lifted, revealing the glowing lights of their village, warm and welcoming. Eldra's voice softened. Tonight, you have all grown, and you, Finn, have taken the first step toward your destiny. As the dawn painted the sky with soft pinks and golds, the children found themselves safely home, hearts full of wonder and dreams yet to unfold. And somewhere in the woods, Eldra watched, her eyes gleaming with the quiet pride of a guide who knew the night held magic for those brave enough to seek it. The sun's first light spilled gently over the horizon, brushing the treetops with hues of amber and rose. Yet in the heart of Midnight Hollow, the night's magic lingered like a soft sigh, wrapping the ancient woods in a final embrace before the day awoke. Eldra settled on a low branch, her feathers still shimmering faintly from the journey. Her eyes, deep pools of knowing, reflected the faces of the children she had guided, each marked by the quiet triumph of survival and the awakening of something new. But Finn's journey was far from over. The forest, though peaceful now, held secrets yet to unfold. He sat by a murmuring brook, the cool water weaving stories as it slipped over smooth stones. His thoughts drifted between fear and hope, the weight of destiny settling gently on his young shoulders.
"Why me?" he whispered to the wind, unsure if he expected an answer. A soft rustle came from the bushes, and Eldra glided down beside him. "Because you listen, and because you carry a heart willing to learn." Finn's eyes met hers, wide and searching. "But what if I fail? What if I'm not ready?" The owl's voice was steady, calm as the night itself. The night does not demand perfection. It asks only for courage, the courage to face what lies within. The boy nodded slowly. As the morning breeze stirred the leaves, he felt a strange calm, as if the forest itself breathed encouragement into his soul. Hours passed like gentle waves, and soon the children gathered again by the ancient oak where Eldra waited. The trials of Midnight Hollow are many, and some paths are hidden from plain sight, but the bravest hearts will always find their way. Suddenly, a shimmer in the air caught their attention, a faint outline of a doorway carved into the side of a great hill, overgrown with ivy and glowing faintly with moonlight's memory. "This is the Gate of Whispers," Eldra explained. "Beyond it lies the valley's heart, the place where your true test awaits." Finn swallowed hard, his companions tightening their circle around him. Together they stepped toward the gate, and as they crossed the threshold, a hush fell, thick as velvet. Inside, the air was cool and tinged with the scent of old stone and wildflowers. The walls seemed to pulse with life, as though the very heartbeat of the earth echoed through the cavernous space. At the center stood a pool of crystal clear water, reflecting not only the children's faces, but glimpses of futures yet to come. Eldra's voice floated like a melody. "Look closely. What do you see?" One by one, the children peered into the water. Some saw visions of laughter and joy, others of shadowed fears and distant storms. Finn gazed deep and saw himself older, seated on a throne carved of stars and moonlight, yet surrounded by faces both familiar and unknown. He blinked, overwhelmed. "Is this my future?" "It is what may be," Eldra said. "The path is never fixed. You hold the power to shape it." The children stepped back, breaths shallow with wonder and uncertainty. Then Eldra lifted her wings, sending a ripple of silver light across the pool. "A choice awaits you all," she said softly. "One that will define your journey, whether to embrace the unknown or turn away." Finn felt the weight of her words settle deep within. His friends looked to him, their eyes filled with trust and hope. With a steady breath, he stepped forward again and reached out to the water's surface. The reflection shimmered, then parted like a veil, revealing a glowing key carved from the very essence of the night. Eldra's eyes shone softly. The key of Midnight Hollow. It unlocks not a door, but a heart, yours to guard and yours to share. The children gasped in awe, each feeling the stirring of something powerful and new. As the cave began to fade with the rising sun, they found themselves once more beneath the ancient oaks, the gate closing behind them with a gentle sigh. Finn held the invisible weight of destiny lightly in his heart, knowing that this night, this magical night, was only the beginning of the journey that would shape not just his future, but the fate of the valley itself. And so, beneath the waking sky, the children set off toward home, guided by the gentle wings of Eldra, the owl of Midnight Hollow, a guardian of secrets, a keeper of stories, and a whisperer of dreams. As the children walked slowly through the thickening forest, the light from the rising sun filtered through the canopy in soft beams, creating a mosaic of gold and green on the mossy floor beneath their feet. Their steps were quiet, their hearts still carrying the echoes of the cavern's magic, each child lost in their own thoughts about the future and the mysterious trials they had faced. Finn glanced around at his friends, feeling a newfound bond growing stronger between them, forged in the fires of fear, courage, and hope. The woods were alive with the gentle sounds of morning, birdsong, the rustle of leaves, and the distant trickle of a stream. But beneath the serene surface, Finn sensed the pulse of deeper magic, as if the very soul of Midnight Hollow was watching over them, waiting. Eldra swooped low, her feathers brushing the air like a soft whisper. "There is one more secret to share," she said, her voice carrying the calm certainty of a timeless guide. "The hollow is protected by an ancient magic, tied to the balance of nature and the courage of those who walk its paths. To be the king you are meant to be, Finn, you must learn to listen not just with your ears, but with your heart." The boy nodded, absorbing her words like a seed soaking up the morning rain. "How do I do that?" he asked softly. "By understanding that every choice you make ripples through the world, like stones thrown into a still pond. Sometimes the ripples are gentle, sometimes they crash, but all are connected. You are part of a story far greater than yourself."
The following morning dawned crisp and clear, the sun casting gentle golden light over the rolling hills that cradled the village. Finn awoke with a sense of calm determination.
The feather's glow had faded with the night, but its warmth lingered in his palm, a quiet reminder of the hollow's magic and the path ahead. As the children gathered in the village square, an elder approached, her eyes wise and kind, her voice carrying the weight of many years. "You have journeyed far," she said softly, "and faced trials that would test even the strongest of hearts. But true strength is not measured by battles won or kingdoms conquered. It is found in the love we give, the courage we show in everyday moments." Finn listened, feeling the truth in her words settle deep within him like a seed ready to grow. Around them, the village seemed to breathe with renewed hope, as if the magic of the hollow had woven itself into the very fabric of their lives. That evening, as twilight painted the sky in shades of violet and rose, Finn sat beneath the ancient oak once more. The stars began to twinkle overhead, each one a silent witness to the promise of a new day. With the feather held gently in his hand, Finn closed his eyes and breathed in the stillness. The owl's voice echoed in his heart, a lullaby of courage, kindness, and the quiet power of believing in oneself. And as sleep embraced him softly, he knew that no matter where life's journey led, the magic of Midnight Hollow would always be with him, guiding, protecting, and lighting the way home. As days turned into weeks, Finn found himself growing not only in courage but in wisdom. The lessons of Midnight Hollow echoed in his thoughts as he helped his friends, listened to the stories of the elders, and tended to the small wonders of the village. The blooming flowers, the gentle streams, and the quiet songs of the forest. One evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of orange and lavender, Finn sat beside the riverbank. The water mirrored the twilight, shimmering softly like a veil between worlds. Eldra appeared once again, her eyes reflecting the last light of day. "Finn," she said softly, "you have embraced the spirit of the hollow. The night's magic lives in you now. Remember, the greatest power is the one that brings peace." The owl spread her wings wide, casting a gentle shadow over the calm waters. "Whenever you feel lost, listen to the wind and know I am near." Finn nodded, feeling a peaceful strength settle deep in his chest. He knew that while the adventures of the hollow might fade into memory, the lessons and the light would remain, guiding him through every night to come. As the stars blinked awake overhead, Finn closed his eyes, ready to rest, knowing the magic of the hollow was a quiet flame in his heart, forever burning bright. The nights that followed brought a deep sense of peace to the village. The children who had once wandered lost now carried the gentle magic of Midnight Hollow in their hearts. Finn especially felt the quiet power growing within him, a steady light guiding his steps even when the path seemed uncertain. One cool evening, as a gentle mist rose from the fields and the moon hung low and full, Finn found himself wandering back to the edge of the forest. The familiar sounds of rustling leaves and soft hoots filled the air, wrapping around him like a comforting embrace. He paused beneath the towering oaks, feeling the pulse of the earth beneath his feet. Eldra appeared silently, landing beside him with grace. "You have grown, Finn," she said, her voice a gentle whisper carried on the breeze. "The journey you began in the hollow had shaped you into someone who understands the true meaning of courage." Finn looked up at the stars, their silver light sparkling like distant fires. "I still have so much to learn," he admitted softly. "And you will," Eldra replied. "But remember, wisdom is not the absence of fear, but the strength to face it. The magic of Midnight Hollow is not just in the enchanted woods, but in every kind act, every brave choice you make."
The feather in Finn's hand glowed faintly, a beacon of the bond between the boy and the forest. "Will I always have this?" he asked. "As long as you carry hope in your heart, the hollow's magic will never leave you," the owl said. Finn smiled, feeling the warmth spread through him like the first light of dawn. Together they watched as the moon climbed higher, bathing the world in silver glow. The night was alive with possibilities, and for the first time, Finn felt ready to face whatever came next, not as a lost child, but as a keeper of light. The village behind him slept peacefully, safe under the watchful eyes of stars and the ancient magic that hummed quietly in the earth. Finn took a deep breath, the cool night air filling his lungs with promise. As he turned to leave, the whisper of Eldra's wings faded into the night, a lullaby to carry him gently into dreams. And so the story of the Owl of Midnight Hollow lives on, not just in whispered legends or the pages of ancient books, but in every heart brave enough to listen to the night and follow the light within. Days melted into nights and back again, each passing moment weaving the quiet magic of the hollow deeper into the fabric of Finn's life. His heart held the light of 1,000 stars, steady and bright, even when shadows crept at the edges of his world. With the feather safely tucked within his cloak, Finn felt a connection not just to Eldra or the enchanted forest, but to something far greater, a gentle strength that whispered of hope, kindness, and the power of believing in oneself. As one evening, as the village gathered beneath a sky full of shimmering constellations, Finn stood before the others, his voice calm but filled with quiet conviction. The magic of the hollow isn't just for us, it's for everyone. In how we treat each other, in how we face our fears, and in the kindness we carry in our hearts. The villagers listened, their faces glowing with understanding. Children clutched hands and elders nodded in agreement, feeling the truth of his words settle gently over them like a warm blanket. As the night grew deeper, Eldra soared above, her wings casting a silver shadow over the peaceful homes. She knew that the boy destined to be king had found his true crown, not one of gold or jewels, but one forged in courage and compassion. And though the hollow's secrets might remain hidden from most, its magic had already touched the hearts of all who lived there, a quiet promise that no darkness was too deep to be lit by a single brave light. Finn closed his eyes beneath the endless sky, breathing in the cool night air, ready for whatever dreams awaited him, knowing he carried the spirit of Midnight Hollow within him, now and always. The seasons turned gently, and the village remained wrapped in the peaceful magic of Midnight Hollow. Finn grew with each passing day, not only in years, but in heart and spirit. The boy who once wandered lost was now a beacon of hope for all who knew him. One crisp morning, as the sun painted the sky with soft pinks and golds, Finn stood atop the highest hill overlooking the village and the shimmering lake beyond. The feather, now nestled safely in a wooden box carved by the village elders, glowed faintly as if still alive with the magic it held. He thought back to the nights when Eldra's wings whispered through the trees, guiding him through the dark, and to the friends who walked beside him on that unforgettable journey. Every step, every lesson had shaped not just a boy, but a leader, one who understood that true strength came from kindness, courage, and the light we carry inside.
As the gentle breeze swept over the hills, Finn closed his eyes, feeling the pulse of the hollow in his veins and the endless sky above. The owl's voice, soft and wise, echoed in his heart one last time. Carry the magic forward,
not just in stories, but in every day you live. With that promise, the village thrived, safe and serene beneath the stars, and somewhere in the quiet night, the owl of Midnight Hollow watched over all, a guardian of dreams and the quiet power of hope. And now, as your own eyelids grow heavy and the night wraps you in its gentle embrace, remember that the light of the hollow lives in you too, guiding you safely home, no matter how dark the path may seem.